Hey, everybody, it's Alan, hoping that you are doing well. It's November 27th, and I want to highlight a bit of an underappreciated guitar player because it's his birthday today. It's November 27th, and that's the birthday of Mr. Daryl Stuermer. Who is Daryl Stuermer? Well, you might recognize him if you look at some live performances by Phil Collins or Genesis over the course of the last 30 years. Kind of a phenomenal sideman, if you will, playing bass and or guitar, depending upon what instrument Mike Rutherford was playing at the time, and or as the guitar player for Phil Collins' solo band. But he's released some independent solo stuff, and we're going to listen to a song in celebration of his birthday called Road Warrior. So, the late 80s, early 90s were definitely considered the hair metal era. 80s into the early 90s was the hair metal era. Then you had the grunge era that came around in the late 90s, bringing out bands like Smashing Pumpkins and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and Nirvana, of course. And then obviously you move into the 2000s where everything is sort of computerized synth pop bleh, and or the hip hop era. For me, though, the late 80s and the early 90s were actually the sort of heyday or massive influence of instrumental music. A lot of killer instrumental stuff. You had the rise of players like Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and Eric Johnson come around in that time period. You had the metal instrumental guys like Chris Impellitteri, Vinnie Moore, you name it. You had the jazz fusion guys like Frank Gambale and Al Di Meola and obviously Alan Holdsworth. And it was a really interesting time because although, people who were into hair metal and or into grunge always thought to themselves, well, that's probably nerd metal or nerd music or whatever, because it's, people studied the instrument. I've been saying for years, as much as I love a lot of the grunge music, but not all of it, and or the punk rock, metal rock genre brought about by bands like Green Day and others, White Stripes and what have you, that in a lot of ways that dumbed down the songwriting and musicianship level of not only the players but the musical listeners. You got very, very, very comfortable with sort of formula music that was disguised as sort of anti-establishment music. And it's still, that was really just here in the US though. It didn't maintain that way globally. Technical guitar playing was still or musicianship was still highly appreciated over in Asia, Europe, and South America. It's really only here in the US that it took a massive major hold and frankly ruined the careers of many a great musician because they were thought of as only being able to play or only performing or only writing in a particular genre. And they had to prove that they could evolve and do other things. So this album here, this performance here it's a 90s recording. There's no doubt about it. It's definitely got some of that sort of John McLaughlin, Frank Gambale, kind of Holdsworthian kind of guitar playing sound in it, if nothing else. And yet I guarantee you it came out late enough where he was releasing this in a time period where the establishment was revolting against this type of music. And so therefore it would never get any kind of radio airplay, even on stations that would have played, Summer Song by Joe Satriani or Cliffs of Dover by Eric Johnson. And so his talent is primarily just known as the other guitar player in Genesis or the guitar player on stage for Phil Collins. And, it's a little bit of a shame, but I mean, he's managed to have himself quite a nice little career and yet still in very, very many ways able to avoid sort of that limelight of uber popularity. Like, if Joe Satriani or Steve Vai walk into a guitar store, they're going to get, recognized and potentially, mobbed or overrun by at least the 40s and 50s crowd. But Daryl Stuermer could walk into a music store and nobody would know who the hell he was primarily, probably 1% of the music store employees might have a clue. Hell, I might not even recognize him, and I'm a bit of a fan, but I might not recognize him until I was talking to him for a little bit, and I'd be like, this guy looks familiar. Or this guy, man, he seems familiar. Why do I know? Oh, my name's Daryl. Oh, Daryl Stuermer, of course. Anyway, happy birthday, Daryl. Thank you for that killer tune. It sounds to me like I want to go find the sheet music on it, because those riffs definitely feel like a tremendous finger exercise, if nothing else. With that said, hope you all enjoyed this. Please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. I know this is not going to get a lot of hits because it's a guitar player with a name that people don't recognize, so it's not going to get searched. And you know what? Again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't care. I'm doing this as much for me as I am to try to open the ears of people who wouldn't necessarily have heard it. So whatever, anyway, just know this. I appreciate you all, and I wish you well. Okay? Take care.